welcome to the fourth episode of the What Not to Do podcast, the show where we dwell deep into the real journeys of leadership, not just to celebrate the wins, but to explore the mistakes, the tough lessons, and the unexpected challenges that come within the territory. Today's guest is Robert Feldman, a seasoned insurance professional with 25 years of experience under his belt. As a co founder of Wow's Insurance Services, he's on a mission to help homeowners in California, particularly those struggling to secure fire insurances in a state where natural disasters have created a crisis in the market. Today, we'll get a glimpse into his journey, uncovering what it takes to navigate one of the most complex and challenging areas in the insurance industry. Robert, we're really happy to have you here.
Oh, the honor's mine. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Yes. So, Robert, you've been working in fire zones and high risk areas for a long time.
Yeah,
What were
25
some
years, 25 long
absolutely,
years. Yep.
absolutely. So, what were the biggest challenges you ran into when you started dealing with this tricky area of insurance?
Well, we saw a trend about 10 years ago, really, where the first exodus of the market, where carriers were pulling back. This is really before a lot of the big fires occurred. The big fires really that range back even to 2015, 2016, 2017, really were the fires that really changed the industry, basically. Um,
Mhm.
being in every major fire, I was prior to being with Wows or starting Wows, I was a broker that did high value homes across California. Been in the past a speaker for the California Association of Realtors on insurance fire zones, working with multiple associations, just trying to help really bring things to the market. And so what happened is this has been a spiral that just, I think the news has kind of really blown it out of proportion to some degree. Because obviously with a lot of times with the news, it's all about the story, right? And making it seem loud. But I mean, obviously there is a crisis, no doubt. I've
Mhm.
watched it spiral. And the problem is, and much like in everything else in life, nothing's really a problem until it's a major problem. You know,
Right.
so really why we created WOWs, and at some point we're even in the process of building a nonprofit as part of WOWs, a whole separate entity, just to really get the information out in this, because we've been very successful over the last year to 2 years helping bring carriers into California. Now, obviously, big news: State Farm and Allstate and all these nationwide, all these different carriers have shut down in California. But bottom
Mhm.
line is we're still helping bring others in and still helping consumers get to the right places. If it's not with us, we help them get to the right places. That's a big thing.
Wow, really seems innovative. You have come out from an really different experience. So, was there ever a time when you tried something that sounded a great idea at first, but ended up being a lesson in what not to do?
Oh, absolutely. In anything in life, I think anybody that is, when you're an entrepreneur, when you're a business owner, you're
Hmm.
constantly testing. I think people are always measured on their successes. And a lot of times, you see entrepreneurs at different fields where you don't realize they had 10 failures prior to the home run swing success. Now, one of the good things about what we've done in my world is obviously as my prior life as an insurance broker, now we're an MGA wholesaler. So we bring carriers into California. So what the neat thing is, as a broker, I kind of got to see what works and what doesn't work, and why companies were getting hurt, insurance companies were getting hurt, and why the carriers are pulling back. And a lot of regulatory stuff, working with regulators in multiple states, seeing what's causing the unwinding of these insurance companies and pulling out. So it's kind of one of those rare times I got to see and watch front view of other people's mistakes and be able to build something with WOWs that really is going to change the industry. We're very close to really getting moving forward. We're already starting to move forward with the WOWs program. An example: it's the first policy in the history of California fully transferable from a seller to a buyer. So, I mean, think about that for a second. There are homes across California that are being told right now they're uninsurable, or it's an exorbitant cost. Imagine if you're a consumer and you're worried about the insurance spiraling and getting out of control, and having a situation where the policy you have would be fully transferable to a buyer. That's incredible for a consumer. At
Absolutely.
the at the same time, it's incredible for the insurance company because
Mhm.
we're working with on these. Because what happens is it takes the vibration out of the market. They're underwriting based on a house. They're able to do these incredible things that are it just changes the rates. It's how to fix insurance in California.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I totally back that. Uh, Most of the successful entrepreneurs have to like go through a lot of failures, like the way you mentioned. And it's not just about trying it once and then you achieve it. You have to try, I don't know, infinite times to
Oh,
actually get there. Maybe you coming up with a policy also, that there have might be a lot of trials and errors of how to actually put it.
yep.
So yeah. So
Well, and
from
it we've been working on this for almost 2 years. I mean,
absolutely.
one of the things I would almost argue that I was at first, my business partners and I were first told when we launched this, we're never going to find a reinsurance company. We're never going to find paper. We're never going to find this. We're never going to find that. It's going to be impossible to domicile your captive. And I kind of laugh. It's the entrepreneurial spirit is we overcome every one of the hurdles. We've overcome such massive hurdles. My business partners and I were just having a meeting last night. We had dinner last night, and we
Mhm.
were just talking about I mean almost like a recap of not just since we started, but just this year alone, since the start of 2024, how
Right.
many incredible strides we've taken and overcome, and being told, there's no one of the greatest stories. We have a broker, incredible a broker in London. The
Mhm.
name of the company is CJ Coleman,
Mhm.
and our contact there. You have to have a broker to represent you to the Lloyd's companies, okay, the Lloyd's
Mhm.
syndicates, the ENS carriers. And what was incredible was when I was getting ready to go over there to London for the first time, he was great guy. Nigel's spectacular. It's like a shout out for Nigel there, right? It's a joke, right?
Uh,
If he's listening. And what was incredible about it was he was, yeah, hey Robert, just gonna warn you, there's not a lot of the companies are gonna want to talk to you about, wildfire in the Western United States, along California, about things. And going to the meeting and being told if we're lucky, we'll get a few maybes. And if we're lucky, maybe we get yes, but there's going to be a lot of no's, and just realize it's just part of, and being able to present it for us on our behalf, working with CJ Coleman and turning so many of these companies that were no's, these big reinsurance company names you would know, that gave us a token meeting because of the fact of CJ Coleman. That then, I mean, you see the mannerisms. I always talk about mannerisms. I'm a big mannerism person when I'm meeting with somebody, and where
mhm.
they were sitting back in their chair, like almost like here's the token meeting, and then
Mhm.
seeing them as we continue to explain what we're doing, how we're changing, and how the mannerism starts to move forward. And now they're on the edge of their seat, and now they're pointing at things, and knowing that we were able to bring them to our side, that's just it's just part of what we do. I mean, it's just it's not an easy process, but
Absolutely.
we're winning the process, is what I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Robert, from your experience, what's one thing insurance companies should definitely avoid when working with high risk properties?
Really, it's amazing to me. So, okay, so there's different layers of insurance. You have the street average agent. That's a normal situation, whether they're
Mhm.
independent, like independent brokers, or whether they're a farmer's, a state farm, or an Allstate. Then you have
Mhm.
a next layer. There's a partial layer, which is what we are. We're an
Okay.
MGA, a managing general agent and slash wholesaler. We bring insurance products and carriers to appoint the independent, or the ones that are allowed to be appointed for. Okay.
Mhm.
Then you have the insurance companies. That can be a State Farm, it could be a Lloyd's of London, or it could be a captive. Those are all insurance companies. Then you have the top layer, which is what no one really knows about. It's the reinsurance. It's the reinsurance companies that come in. So what was amazing to me when we got into this process is the reinsurance companies a lot of times didn't know where their risks are. So think about that for a second. Let's say you and I have $5 billion,
Mhm.
and we're gonna put $5 billion of our company's risk into California for a homeowners policy.
Mm-hmm.
I think you and I might want to know where those policies are prior to binding. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yes.
That doesn't happen right now.
Oh.
And so, one of the most shocking things and one of the creative, innovative things when we work with the reinsurance companies, because I go to London and different places, is the way we organize and the way we built our program. They get to see the, so that, let's say again, you're the person I'm talking to, and you're going to put $1 billion at risk. I'm going to build the portfolio along with all the inspections and all the high value inspections and everything. So you get to see all 100 homes of your risk prior to them actually going in force.
Oh.
So what does that do? That makes reinsurance companies that support the insurance companies much more comfortable being in the
Of-
market. It can
right.
show diversification of risk. It can show all the things. So again, to your answer your question, there are a lot of things that one of the worst things that anyone ever said to me in my 25 years, and I always say this, is when I would work with senior leadership of multiple insurance companies, which I've always done, I would ask a question. Well, this doesn't make sense to me. Why are we doing this, whatever it is, this way? And the worst thing you could ever say to me as a person is you would say, because that's the way we've always done it. If you say that to me, that it's like an immediate, I have isms and crazies. That's like to launch the crazy. Because just because we've always done it this way, it's like that's the definition of Einstein's theory of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So
Absolutely.
it would just make me crazy when I would sit down and talk to, as I mentioned to you earlier, doing the fully transferable from sellers to buyers. This is a no-brainer. Analytically, we're able to show from a number standpoint, there might be some coverage adjustments when we transfer. If a
Mm-hmm.
person had multiple liability claims, there might be an adjustment to the policy, but whether or not a house burns has no relevance whether you own the house or I own the house. So why would
Right.
you let the fluctuation? We need stability in the market, not just in California, but my friends in Nevada, and we were dealing with Nevada regulators need it. They need it in Oregon. They need it in Washington. They need it in Montana. They need it in Idaho. They need it in Colorado. They need it in Utah. We're
Right.
going to be. This is what we look at. But again, to answer your question, it's so shocking. What has shocked me is really the process of the industry and us going through and trying to fix it. It's wild when you see with like a lot of what you're doing with the nod of the head. When I would we say we're going to do this differently, and people will go, why? And I go, because when I meet with a major reinsurance company and they see how we process this and how we protect them from
Right.
loss, that head
Right.
nods. And that's all I'm going for. Give me the head nod saying yes, and we're in.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, because you mentioned about, policies that are really not into play, or, these processes that are not into play, and we know the situation in California. I want to ask that anyway, the situation is tough for homegrowners and also for real estate folks alike. So, what are
Yep.
your key notes, or what are your lessons you would have picked while working with policymakers? One, because you
Yep.
mentioned them,
Yep.
and other leaders to tackle these crises instead of just telling that this is the process that we follow. This is how
Yeah.
it happens. So, what is
Exactly.
one keynote that you would like to tell them?
Well, right now, what I explain when I do meetings, I speak at a lot of different realty association meetings, different realty offices, even in consumer groups I've done. One of the biggest things I stress is at this moment, we're not the only ones, but we've helped solve a major issue. One of the major issues in California, if you talk to a lot of a bad myth, as I would say, is of what's going to market right now is that there are consumers that are being told that their only choice for their 2,500 square foot house is the California Fair Plan, which is a policy of last resort.
Mhm.
Well, that's not true. 99.9% of the homes in California have other carriers. They're being told by a broker, this is your only choice. Now, to be fair, that might be the best choice depending on the risk type things. But to tell a consumer this is your only choice, The only example I would use, there's two. Some of the older homes in Northern California still have wood shake roofs. I'm sorry, insurance companies don't want it. Even the California Fair Plan doesn't want it. They're pushing back. I'm sorry, you're going to need to change your roof. The other one is there are the old electrical systems called knob and tube. So the knob
Mm-hmm.
and tube system is an old system and it needs to be replaced. Again, I'm sorry, but this is the one percenter thing, less than a 1%. The 99% of the rest of the homes in California, whether they're 2,000 square feet or 20,000 square feet, have options. And
Mm-hmm.
so, really, what gets me upset when I see the industry is there's such bad information. That's again why I am so thrilled to be here today, being on your podcast and the work that you're doing, getting this word out. Because bottom line is, and I'm sorry about you can hear I'm tapping the table when I'm doing this. Man, there's got to be a change. Not only is there got to be a change, there's got to be a cleanup of information. And
Absolutely.
that's the two things that just make me not sleep at night. I'm one that doesn't sleep much. I'm constantly on the go. And so as we started talking about before, I went from Bermuda over the last week to Nevada state regulators to a couple of days home and to now through here to Palm Desert at the great trade show. We're going to be appointing brokers throughout California. And I'll be in San Diego at one of the biggest reinsurance conferences next week, Monday, Tuesday. I do what I do not because of a job. I do it because I love it, and I want to fix this. And it's a
Absolutely.
passion. It's a passion, crusade almost, as I would say.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I hope we can help you through to actually put out, or we of course can't eradicate the entire misinformation that is present, but definitely we can put out the information that is relevant.
Yep.
So
That's
kudos
it
to you.
continues. And we're really thrilled to work with you on it. Every time we have a press release, we have an exciting announcement. I'm going to cliffhanger everyone out there that's listening right now. We've got a really great program that's going to be very soon coming to California. It's an excess fire, it looks like, and we're really excited about it. We're just getting the final details. It will help again stabilize the market. So that's the really thing we're doing right now. While we launch our WOWs program for all of our neat tricks of things that we're going to work on to fix, we're working with a lot of the reinsurance companies across the world right now to continue to bring things in to safeguard and help change. And that's a great thing too.
Yes, yes, definitely. I'll also look forward to these programs. So, as you know, the markets are ever evolving. There are new trends.
Yep.
So, what new trends should brokers be aware of? One, and what are some of the common mistakes they should avoid when helping homeowners in the risk areas?
I'm going to go backwards. So yeah, the mistakes are the one I want to talk about. Okay. There's a really bad issue going on in California right now for those that are on the California Fair Plan. There was a bill that was passed, and the bill was AB 2756. Now, I'll say this for everyone out there, not a big fan of that bill. I won't get into it, and I don't want to be political. It did some really terrible things, but it also at the same time did some great things. But one of the terrible things it did is it requires an insured to be insured within 80% at the time of loss, specifically on the California Fair Plan, or the policy reverts to what's called actual cash value, which is depreciation. So I'll put that's the insurance fees. Let me tell you what it means, basically. What it means is for those that are out there, if you're not insured to value at the time of loss, the California Fair Plan has $3 million of total coverage. So a lot of the larger homes are now trying to get on the California Fair Plan. If they only have the California Fair Plan for their fire coverage, as you heard me mention excess fire,
Mhm.
what happens is the policy reverts to actual cash value depreciation. So here a consumer thinks they have $3 million to rebuild their house. Their house was built in 1985.
Hmm.
They don't, and at the time of loss, it was 4 million to rebuild the house.
Hmm.
They're going to say you were not within the 80%. They depreciate the $3 million. That consumer is going to receive little or no money.
Absolutely.
And it's what's scary right now is that's not kind of like an off outlier. That's going to be, there's an estimation as much as 90% of the consumers out there right now that are on the California Fair Plan will fail that clause.
Right.
So if you
That's
have a
really
2,000 square foot house and you wrote your policy 5 years ago, and the person put it at $200 a square foot, you're insured
mm,
for $400,000 or $500,000. That house rebuild might be $1 million right now to rebuild. By
right.
not properly insuring, this is what I would say to all the brokers and all the consumers. If you're on the California Fair Plan, you need to make sure it's like I joke around about the three bears, right? Not too hot, not too cold, just right. You with a fair plan, not too high, not too low, just right. You can't be just right. You've got to be high on coverage because
Right.
right now in California, the rebuild costs are exploding. The rebuild throughout California, there are consumers that still think that you could rebuild your house for 200 square foot. You can't. There's nowhere in California. I don't care if it's an A-frame house, unless you're a builder and you have your own building company, which is a little different. If you're a normal consumer, it's 300 to 400 a square foot at a minimum. And it's so scary when I see brokers come into our program and they're doing the excess fire or they're looking at our WOWS program and I'll see the California Fair Plan. That's the first thing I'm talking to them about is they got to fix it. They don't, and most brokers don't even know that law is in existence right now, that rule's in existence.
Mm.
So it's pretty scary.
Yeah, it's problematic as well as if there's unawareness, then it's more problematic.
It's exactly it. I get arguments. I have brokers that'll argue, come back and argue with me, and then I'll
Mm,
send them the wording in the legislation, and then it's like opening up their eyes. Well, where's the education piece for the insurance brokers?
mm. Right. That's the
I've
loophole.
given testimony that the California Fair Plan, the way they're setting their policy right now, they should be requiring an acknowledgement by the broker submitting a thing that they understand that the insurability requirement, and if they don't have access, I mean, almost like a checkbox for that. They
Right.
don't have that. And these are
Right.
things to help protect consumers, help protect brokers. I mean, because there's a lot of brokers that write one policy a year or two policies a year with the
Mm,
California Fair Plan. Well, how dangerous is that? The analogy is, God forbid, if I was having a heart attack, do I want to go to the cardiologist that does one or two surgeries a year, or do I want to go to the heart surgeon that does, hundreds of surgeries a year?
absolutely.
You
The,
just,
the the second one, of course.
it's oh my goodness, it's just, and it's just the education piece. So the combination of those two can be really scary. Can be really scary.
Yeah, so the documentation for all of these things is there, but there is unawareness
Yep,
with the brokers. That's the thing, right?
exactly. Yep. The documentation, you have to kind of weed through it. It's really more, again, this goes back to myths that I talk about. It's
Mhm.
the education piece.
Mm,
If I was the joke of in charge of all of insurance, and I am nowhere near that, these are the things that I would be constantly doing with the insurance world, is to make sure we stamp out myths, not only to insurance brokers, but to consumers. You
mm,
have to, you have to do these things because
absolutely.
some of the fires that are burning around California are, some homes are burning, but not a lot. But there's going to be a lot of consumers that
Right,
are in Wrightwood and different areas that are going to believe they're insured to value and they're not, and that law is going to be invoked against them. And
right, right.
it's not a good thing to find out that you thought you had $2 or $3 million of coverage and find out you have a couple 100,000
Hmm.
after that everything's burned.
Right,
Not That's
right.
not the time. That's not the time to find it.
Yes. So I was actually going to come on this question only with respect to brokers,
Yeah.
especially. So you are a regular speaker for the California Association of Realtors,
Yep.
and you do help them in getting, like, you do help people and getting educated with
Yep.
respect, on insurance and everything. So
Yep.
what are some common misconceptions, like the way you mentioned about, these undocumented things that people are not aware of? So, what are
Yep.
the common misconceptions realtors and brokers have about these high risk properties, and
Properties.
how can they avoid falling into these traps?
Really, if from the real estate standpoint, we really educate about getting out early. Got to get out in front. Got to get. When I'm speaking in front of different conferences, I speak at Compass, different chains a lot,
Mhm.
and for realty chains. And one of the biggest things I talk about with realtors is getting out in front. If you're a listing agent and you want to be an ostrich and you want to go into escrow and put your head in the sand and not worry about insurance, you're gonna have your escrows fall apart. It's gonna that I see it every day. Um, I get anywhere between 2 to 5 phone calls a day from a realtor that has never met me or never talked to me across California, and I've known a
Mhm.
lot of them. Okay, that they're asking for help because they're trying to close. Like an example, we had one this morning. They're trying to close escrow tomorrow. My
Mhm.
response was, it takes 7 to 10 days.
Right.
It can take up to 7 to 10 days for an insurance quote. So it's not a question of if we're going to be able to help them. We can help them, but it's going to be seven
Mhm.
to ten days. And
Right.
so and so what we talk with realtors all the time is getting out in front. This has become such a major problem for realty, for that the realtor, the California Southern Houston realtors did their, you know how you have disclosures, different disclosures or inspection times. They
Mhm.
actually have a contingency period or different contingency times. They made the contingency period um, 15 days and separated insurance out by itself recently because that's how much of a problem insurance is for realtors.
Mm.
So, it's definitely one of those things where, it becomes a thing. We talk about that. We talk about fire scores and why it's important to have insurance fire scores in advance for your listings. Really, having insurance almost ran in advance. What insurance companies are willing to write it? In the past, realtors, if you were a listing agent, you never worried about the insurance and the buyer. That's the buyer's agent. The buyer's, well, what happens when your escrow's falling apart? It becomes a major issue. That's why they put that contingency in there. But I mean, we're just telling them to get out in front. And look, right now in the current market, it's not a healthy market. I'm not going to say it's a great market. Obviously, we know there's problems. I made a joke earlier about that it's made out to be a horrific market. It's a challenging market, is what I would say. And
Right.
but what I would and but again, if there's not a lot of companies. Most companies now, if you have a given house, there's not a lot of companies. There's a very short, which means there's that supply and demand, right? Supply
Mhm.
of people requesting insurance and is outweighing the demand of the insurance companies. So
Mhm.
obviously rates are rising. Insurance companies are taking rates. It's just it's gotten very challenging. Where in the past I would be at meetings with insurance brokers and we would
Mhm.
talk shop, but we were almost all we were competitors. Now when I meet
Right.
with insurance brokers, and now especially the way I am as a man appointing the brokers, we're an MGA. It's more about who can do something. It's not a
Mm.
competition anymore. It's who can actually write a policy. So that's why with the realtors, if all the realtors out there listening, man, if you don't know your fire scores, especially, and I get in trouble with some of the realtors because I'll have the buyers agents contact me and we'll run scenarios for buyers and they have
Mhm.
two homes and the famous always line is you get a consumer that's split between two houses. The family can't decide. They want house A or they want house B. Let me
Mhm.
help you with something. If one house insurance is $3,000 and the other one's $30,000, which one do you think they're taking? The $3,000 one.
Yeah. It's
So,
3 times.
yeah, I mean, so sometimes there's a big spread between this. There can be as much as a 400 or 500% variance to market. So,
Mm.
it's gotten really crazy. So we've seen that also. Really, it makes. I always apologize to all the realtors when I speak to them because I'm
Mhm.
apologizing that they have to be in our world. But and I kind of give them the rules of engagement of being in our world. They don't want to
Mhm.
talk about insurance. You don't want to send real forward insurance quotes. That's a whole other problem. But you have to be involved to make sure that you're getting quotes done, that your buyers, your representing buyers, are solving these problems or having someone solve it for them. If not,
Mhm.
you're going to have problems with your escrows in closing.
Right, right, absolutely. So yeah, the market is definitely challenging, but also there's another challenge that is climate change
Yep.
and wildfires. I don't think aren't going away anytime soon.
Nope.
So where do you see the future of high risk insurance heading, and what lessons from the past mistakes should shape how the industry moves forward?
Well, first of all, I think, by the way, technology has helped tremendously. for this.
Mm.
Um, you know, a lot of people give, I don't think of people give a lot of credit to Cal Fire. First of all, the California fire, they have learned and their technology has gotten better about how they attack fires and how they knock down fires. So the technology itself has gotten exponentially better when it
Mhm.
comes to fighting fires. So
Mm.
fighting fires have gotten a lot better. I think, it doesn't matter without getting political whether you believe in climate change or whether you don't believe in climate change. Obviously, we're having more fires. Okay. So what are we doing to solve those issues? So obviously, Cal Fire getting exponentially better is great. Also, how Firewise communities are getting involved. So where we were 10 years ago, from a fire department, from a community situation, even companies that are coming in to protect homes, like
Mm.
risk mitigation companies, we are exponentially better. So if you were to ask me 10 years ago to now, the climate change from 10 years ago to now, but also comparing it to how we are with technology and risk mitigation and Cal Fire programs and things,
Mm.
we have outpaced any kind of a global change or global warming. But it needs to continue. It needs to continue. There are still things. Um, I'm a study of this. I study all the fire patterns and things of the nature. I
Mm.
study history. That old line, those that don't study history are doomed to repeat it. And I'm a big believer of that. Well, like there were different Indian tribes that were here, the Shumash and different tribes. Well, when they would leave one of their camps to go to the other camps, they would do their own form of controlled burns. They would light things on fire and leave and come back and watch the ground revitalized. I'm not saying, I don't want to have people think I'm not environmentally friendly, okay?
Mm.
But there are things that we have to do from mitigation standpoints to make it sustainable going forward. I think a lot of people don't even realize that certain plants, there's certain plants that seeds don't even blossom or plant unless it's
Mm.
a certain fire degree of like 300 or 400 degrees. So, I mean, there's different things. It's really a more of an ecosystem approach, is what I would
Mhm.
argue. People will say they don't want anything touched, and there are people that say they want to burn everything. I sit kind of in the middle of like what's best for the environment. What is a eco-friendly approach of how we can sustain and move forward? It's a
Absolutely.
it's an all hands on deck. This isn't going to be Wow's fixing everything. We're going to fix a lot, but that's why we're building the nonprofit. Our nonprofit will be investing heavily in the different technologies. There are companies that are like BurnBot, that are controlled burn machines that actually it's incredible. If you ever have time, I would go and look at that company BurnBot. It goes over land and burns, but it encapsulates so it doesn't do it, and it actually takes the smoke with a little bit of water that puts it back to the ground. So it revitalizes and almost fertilizes the ground. Well, this should be everywhere. This should be
Right.
everywhere. I mean, then we can start really affecting change for insurance. So these are things that, we talk about all the time.
Nice, nice. So I really did not have knowledge of this, but yeah, technology with respect to technology, I think that's the entire loop. If there's a problem, there's a solution with respect to another technology, and again, there's a problem to which another greater technology is
Yeah,
formed to solve the solution. So it's like a
absolutely.
pattern that's ongoing. Yeah.
Yep,
So we want to conclude with a piece of advice
yep.
on what not or do you think that if someone is entering the high risk insurance world,
Mhm.
what would be your piece of advice on what not to do, and while they are entering into the market, anyone, the
Really,
brokers?
whether it's a high value or high value, whether it's a high fire, whether it's a normal value or normal area, really is it's you cannot be a consumer that is putting the ostrich effect, your head in the sand. You need to really know what your risks are, what is,
Mhm.
and be properly informed.
Yeah.
I do an absolute ton of education pieces, as you heard me talk about stamping out myths. And there are a lot of consumers. We help a lot of consumers across California currently, but there's a lot of times I'll have a consumer say, hey, this is what I'm looking at. This is a company that's coming this way, and I'll be excited for them because if it's a
Mm,
good option, man, I want them to help them get there. Really making sure an education piece of what to look for. Well, I mean, one of the insurance companies came out with a horrific thing. They snuck in a $250,000 maximum wildfire coverage.
mm,
So consumers thought that they were fully insured for wildfire on $5 and $6 million rebuilds and didn't realize they had a $250,000 coverage. Well,
mm.
you can't have that. That's horrifically terrible. And so, with all the changes, there's so many changes that need to happen, which we're helping do right now. It's just as a consumer, you have to be, especially, I'm thinking about one of the realtor slogans that they say all the time is that for most consumers, a home is the biggest investment they will ever have in their lifetime. Well, if this is your biggest investment, any investor, if you're investing in a company or stocks, you might want to read up on it a little bit to
Yeah,
know what you're
absolutely.
investing in. Same idea as this. As a consumer out there, please, 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 everyone can reach out to me. They can go to Wow's website, Wow's WOWS insurance.com. If I'll even say it out there, my email is really simple. It's Robert at Wow's WOWS insurance.com. People usually forget the S, by the way, and I'll get a message. So that's why I had to stress the S there. But again, just getting out. And if anyone out there that's listening has a problem or things of that nature, we can definitely help get them to the right spots. We do work with brokers throughout California. We can definitely help.
Absolutely. So, Robert, I think you're really, striving for change. Vows, I think, is doing more than insurance, to be very honest,
Thank you.
with respect to the things that also you're pushing forward, your energy in this particular podcast where you're really committed to send out the message is truly adorable, and we will make sure that all of the things that you have said get rightly translated into different formats. So thank you so much for being here. I truly
Thank you.
enjoyed the conversation. I truly enjoyed the things you have put forward, and these things are really informative, and these things should be there in the public domain. So yeah, we'll make sure to have all of them.
That's great. Thank you so much for that help. I appreciate. And again, thank you so much for taking time to do this podcast. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much to you. Thanks for your time.
All right. You have a great day.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Have a great day. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.